The Longitude Prize is part funded by Innovate UK and part by Nesta, UK charity. You may know Nesta has a Centre for Challenge Prizes. We construct challenge prizes a lot. We developed the H2020 prize on a diagnostic, and we're currently working with President Obama on his diagnostic challenge, which is due to be announced in a couple of weeks, which is a $20 million diagnostic prize. But the Longitude Prize, so you may know the history. 300 years ago, the big challenge at the time was determining longitude at sea. And the British government, for the first time, used a challenge prize approach, offered £20,000 for someone that could come up with a way of determining longitude at sea to high accuracy. And it was solved by a carpenter, John Harrison. And what was interesting for us, looking at that from Nesta's point of view, is that he wasn't a recognised scientist at the time, and he approached it by inventing the marine chronometer, not the expected science solution. It was expected to come from astronomy. So that was really interesting. 300 years later, the Astronomer Royal, Lord Martin Rees, who's a good friend of Nesta's, approached Nesta and said, would you consider developing a prize now to celebrate that 300-year anniversary and have it focused on a similar global problem? But for the first time, we think, in the world, have the public decide on what the topic should be. So, I had support very early on from the Prime Minister, and he announced the intention to have the Longitude Prize in 2014. And a committee was brought together by Lord Rees, many of the high-level scientists in the UK, I have to say not very diverse, many south-east based within England, so not even diverse in the UK, let alone diverse within the world. But it was put together, from what I hear, very quickly, and the idea was that they had to be kind of broad-based scientists of high level. What happened then was around about a year of breaking into that committee into subcommittees, working with the public, doing some focus groups, and eventually coming up with 6 shortlisted prize potential topics. Now, these were topics of interest for the world at large, but topics where it was felt that a challenge approach could go some way. So it's not just looking at problems where there's a market incentive, it's not looking at problems where there's a philanthropic incentive, it's looking for that middle ground where it's felt that an inducement prize, a challenge prize, would open up a new market and trigger innovation. And so the 6 shortlisted areas were thrown out to the public in the UK, and in partnership with the BBC and with Amazon, over 100,000 votes were cast. I hope that some of you voted last year between May and June. So 100,000 votes were cast, and the answer to that, the question of what do you think is the biggest issue of the day, was antibiotic resistance. So it's great to know that the public within the UK are recognising the problem. Whether they recognise it, as we've heard today, in its kind of entirety is another matter, but they at least know that there's a problem of antibiotic resistance, which is fantastic. Then started 4 months of talking to around 500 experts and bringing together that topic into a set of really clear terms and conditions, guidelines for how you win the prize. So the prize pot is £10 million. There's 5 years to solve the challenge. And that is split in a number of 2 ways, so that the winner of the prize, there can only be one winner, gets £8 million. £2 million is reserved for those that need support to enter the prize. So going back to Harrison at the beginning of the Longitude journey, we want to encourage people into the prize that don't normally work in this area or need to work in collaboration with others. We're looking at cross-disciplinary work, we're looking at cross-global disciplinary work, and for that we recognise that we need to provide some incentive for those that aren't already that already have that kind of infrastructure and support. So we provide financial and also non-financial support to help teams get involved. How do you win? You'll notice on here the word transformative point of care. So to win, you have to develop a transformative point of care diagnostic. It's lovely to hear that so many times today that you're looking at that as one of the solutions that's needed for this issue. We also recognise that this is an important part of the problem, but not the only thing that needs to happen. These are the criteria that people need to address to be able to solve it. And to solve the prize, you have to produce a design or prototype, a business plan which shows it getting to full distribution, full manufacturer distribution, and also the equivalent of a target product profile. So you have to have defined various elements, including the criteria. Now, the one thing that happened along the journey of us talking to these 500 experts around the world was a recognition that we couldn't define what the diagnostic looks like. We couldn't define what the sample methodology would be, what sample type was used, what infection it was going to be directed towards, what accuracy levels it had, because the professionals were telling us that you could actually have a number of different tests that fulfill the criteria. It's supposed to be very hard and challenging, but they couldn't predict what it would look and feel like. And so the criteria are there as a guide, and what we put in place is a number of judges. There are 25 judges whose job is to compare apples with pears with oranges and decide which one of those goes far enough to reach this vision, which is about revolutionising how antibiotics are conserved for the future. So the only hard criteria we have is rapid. It needs to provide a test result within 30 minutes. All of the other criteria, and you've mentioned loads of them today, around accuracy, around affordability, it has to be demonstrated within the parameters of global use. So point of care means clinical point of care in some countries, it means community health workers in other countries, it means patients and over-the-counter scenarios. So they have to demonstrate as a team that they have appreciated those different health systems and provided evidence to back up how it can be used in such different environments. It may be that one application is provided for one particular type of point of care and one for another. It will certainly have different price points. When we look at affordability, it's about affordability against the next best alternative, and for some that is buying antibiotics for the equivalent of 10 or 20p. They have to also demonstrate that it's needed, so we don't dictate the infection. It has to be it has to be used. We don't say it has to be multiplex, but they have to convince the judging panel that it has enough of an impact to transform this area. It has to be easy to use also, so bearing in mind it could be used by a patient, and based on WHO guidelines it should be used in the majority of health settings, so no power, no cold store, and so on. This is the panel, so Colette Goldrick represents Northern Ireland on the panel. The panel is a bit more diverse, and the great thing about the panel was we knew what the topic was, so we could select people that had great specialities. They cover everything from diagnostic developers, AMR specialists, health economists, social scientists. What's really important about the prize, and something that is reflected in the criteria, is we don't just want a great technical solution, it has to be able to get to market. And so the business plan, the model is as important as the technical target product profile. And the panel reflects the fact that we've got specialists that will look at the feasibility of that getting to the places it says it will get to. So the team have to talk about the regulatory environment, cultural sensitivities of that particular sample method, and so on. Okay, so the timeline for this, the prize opened to the public in November of last year. At that point, teams can register. Now, registration means that you flagged to the world that you're interested in being part of winning the prize. You have information about events that are happening. They're happening across Northern Ireland, across the UK, and in many countries across the world in the next 12 months. As a registered team, you then decide at what point in the 5 years you want to submit your application to win. The first time that can be done is the end of May this year, May 31st. It then is a rolling timeline every 4 months until it's won. One of the parts of that deliberation process, as part of the judging process, is that we would take it to live clinical trials. Depending on where it is in the world and the cost of that, we might have to limit that. So having partnerships that help us do that are really important. Okay, so my last message would be, please have a look on the website and think about entering. If you have any interest at all in the prize but need collaboration, please get in touch with us. We're going to try and put forward quite a lot of events that help people find collaborative partners. But what was also great today was hearing from organisations and institutions who could really help Longitude Prize as a team to try and look at things like helping the competitors develop their prototypes, understanding lab testing environments, understanding some of the other considerations they may have. Some of these teams haven't produced diagnostics before, but they have great ideas in an area of engineering or science. So any support you can give us would be grateful for, but please get Northern Ireland up on the order of registration so we can see if we can get it one here. That would be great.